Welcome back to Optimum Live, episode 27. This one's titled, Why Your Business Can Feel Busy, Yet Not Making Money. So welcome back to episode 27 of Optimum Live. Really interested with this one as a business owner myself because it resonated with me. It can very often feel we're flat out, we're working incredibly hard, but it doesn't always translate to profitability.
That's right.
And just quickly, the point I'm going to say that summed it up for me is when people turn to me, oh, how's it going? Really busy. And the response I always get is, that's got to be good. It isn't always, is it?
No. And I think that's what some clients can struggle with, is that you'll go to them and you say, oh, you've had a profitable year, or so far, year to date, turnover is up, and they say, well, where's the cash though? And that's why these metrics are really, really important, to give you a holistic view and to piece all that together in order to be where you want to be.
And I get the impression this is both from, I don't know whether both is the right word. Let me see how many I count up now. Planning and analysing, so the before and the after, really. Well, I guess the before, during and after, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about planning. It's about setting those goals in the first instance. You have a strategy. Then you want the monitoring piece in the middle. And then you don't want to just get, oh, okay, this is my end goal. A strategy is rolling, yeah? So, and that I think is what business is about, because we're dynamic, we pivot. It's ever changing. So that monitoring piece in the middle is really, really important, so you can make decisions quickly but effectively.
I know, I can't remember who it was now, but I was chatting to a really successful business owner in the last week or two, and us on the outside are there seeing how successful they are being, and they genuinely are. But he openly said, we've pivoted 3 times in the last 2 years. And that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. And that's actually why they're so successful. And that's coming from having that, holistic view to know, cool, that's working. That's not, what was it? 2 episodes ago of Optimum Live with Mike. And we were talking about that, between Christmas and New Year, where us business owners sit there with a drink in hand and analyze what's been good, what hasn't. Well, you can only do that with the information at hand.
Yeah. And for SMEs in particular, the additional limitation that we're up against is resource. And by that, I mean time. So especially for a lot smaller entities, a lot of it's an owner-managed business, right? So you only have so much time to complete the planning, because you're also going out and winning the work. You're also then managing the workforce, the systems, the processes, pivoting for any other external factors that may have presented themselves or reared their ugly head. As
one or the other,
Yeah, and that's hard. It's hard to prioritize it. So tools to use whilst you're doing this monitoring piece in the middle, also very important to save time.
It really is. And again, that resonated with me, because it could be as simple as a conversation with someone else makes you have that epiphany moment, which could be a good thing, could be an exciting thing, or you guys go behave when we talk to you about it, whichever way round it goes. Not just negatives that goes, that's not working. It's either or. I love the fact that you boil this down to 4 key metrics that will give me as a business owner the bigger picture.
Yeah. These are core. So the core metrics, I'd say any business should be looking at. And then in order to tailor it to your business, you may have 1 or 2 others. For SMEs, any more than that, it actually becomes very, very onerous, unless you're looking at other specific areas like, what's the return on investment on marketing or whatever. We won't talk about that today. Here we're talking about literally the backbones. What's the nucleus? What's the driver that drives all of the other activities in the business?
Yeah. I mean, hearing you saying about sort of getting more detailed, that's got to be when you're a bigger company and you've got experts in those areas that are on board. Whether it's the CFO or whatever it might be. And it's like, well, that's what they get to do as an SME. It's all on me.
Yeah. And they have a much more significant investment in software too.
Of course.
Much more bespoke, much more. And then, as you say, the people to man that, so 2 very, very different beasts.
Before we move on to the metrics then, when we're talking about us as business owners in SMEs in particular, you know, wearing a whole load of hats and very little time once we're wearing all of them all, it can also become very difficult to understand what I'm seeing. That's one as well. But we're about to talk about these 4 metrics that we look at, but that's where working with you guys at Optimum becomes really useful, because you can interpret what we're looking at. What does it mean? Does it give us an idea of where we could go?
Yeah, I think historically, certainly where I grew up in accounting firms, you tended to have a year-end meeting. So you spoke after the year-end. I think more forward-thinking accountants now are insisting on a pre-year-end meeting. Yeah. But let's take it one step further, which is what we try. Often when a client comes to you, or a prospective, comes to you and they say, oh, I'm looking for a new accountant, we always go through the first bit of, okay, what are the pain points? And they'll say, oh, well, Joe Bloggs didn't do this, he didn't bring that, blah, 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 blah. But actually we get to the crux of what they're saying that they want, that they need. But actually there's a big difference between what they want and what they need. So in those discussions, we do a whole lot of listening. And normally you end up doing 2 quotes almost. Right, this is what you've told me that you want. Actually, this is what you need. And it may not be that the client is able to engage in that straight away, but certainly to get there. And those kind of conversations, which aligns with the discussion today, multiple touch points in the year. You shouldn't be talking to your accountant once a year, ideally not even twice a year. It actually should be multiple smaller meetings. Yeah, they don't need to be a 3-hour meeting or an hour meeting each time, but just to understand what the business is doing. Software allows us to have visibility back of house now, so we can see without coming to see you, etc. But those insights that you're talking about, that's the important bit, even if that's a phone call on your way to wherever.
Yes, I was about to say, it's not even meetings all the time, is it? I forget which episode it was, but it was recently that it was talking about, look, it might just be that we drop an email that go, just had a look, by the way, you're absolutely on track with what we spoke about, crack on, you know, and it's like, that didn't need to be a meeting. So, but it is those touch points, isn't it? Without question. I get that, because you're the people that understand what the numbers are telling us at the end of the day. And that's where it's useful. Yeah, okay.
You're the people that understand your business. We don't entirely get that. You know the intricacies of it. It's very important. 2 heads are better than 1.
That's a valid point, actually. The other way is that it's not always black and white.
No.
Which, as accountants, you kind of have to live in a degree of that black and white world, I would imagine, because the numbers don't lie. It is what it is. But you need our interpretation of it for you to then interpret what the bigger picture. It's a 2-way relationship.
It is,
isn't it? That's why whenever I talk about you guys, you're not accountants, you're business advisors as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and I think that's the new age of accountants and accountancy. Yes. Definitely. Business advisory and a pragmatic approach for me is always preferred.
But by that you mean that you don't suddenly dictate to me that I've got to do it that way?
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I do appreciate as well.
But I also, to immerse myself in somewhat in what you do, why you do it, how you execute. Because what's the point in me giving you a recommendation for a piece of software or a KPI, a metric to follow, if it actually doesn't mean anything to you? And also the language that I talk to you in. Why fire, words from the accounting standards or from wherever when, that's jargon to you.
Yes.
Which,
and I think it was Mike again was making the point saying that's where a meeting does work better, because you could be there telling me this stuff. And if you suddenly see this blank look on my face, I haven't expressed it, but you've seen it, and you will instantly just reword it in a slightly different way, because you'll have seen that that's just gone straight over my head.
I've been with clients before, delivering numbers where we're at, whatever, and realised that of the 3 people sat there was one person who was really not getting it, but was also not vocalising that. And I've tried again in a different manner, still not worked. Looked around the room, there was a whiteboard and whiteboard pens. I said, do you mind? Up I went, drew a picture.
Wow.
And from there, the trust that came from that client, actually, and our relationship really, we had a good relationship anyway, but with that individual in particular, really flourished.
Yeah.
And it's just about being dynamic, I suppose.
Because you can't condescend, can you? That's the big one.
No.
There's a reason why they've stayed quiet. They're embarrassed about admitting they don't quite understand that bit.
Yeah.
Which we never should be.
it's complex, right? For a non-finance person or, a non-accountant, and it's not your job to know what we do. It's not my job to know how to do what you do. It's about bringing those two skill sets together. So yeah, getting up and drawing a picture is actually because you notice that someone is much more visual than they are with, lots of words.
Yeah.
So yeah, you should be able to read that.
Absolutely. No, it makes sense.
And I'm terrible at drawing pictures, but we got there.
Hey, it's not Pictionary, so it's fine.
So true.
Other games are available. Right, the 4 metrics.
Yes.
Take us through them.
So we're here to talk about turnover,
Yep.
gross profit, net profit, which I'm going to say is profit after tax.
Yep.
Okay, so after you've paid the taxman, and cash.
See, this is a key one. I know when I first set out in business, I thought cash was king, and it isn't. That's where we get what Mike calls the naughty boy tax, the director's loan account, because I was naively going, well no, this is and I haven't got to the stage of taking, reasonable amounts out, but it was like, oh, that's what I was paying. And it's like, no, it's not cash, it's profit. And that was my first lesson. Because the phrase is cash is king. That's what we live our lives by.
It is,
and it doesn't work in business.
And as we work through these, we'll start to build a picture, and you'll see that actually you might have profit, but then you don't have the cash in the bank. Why that is. So,
okay.
And that's really important. And that is often where businesses fall down. But I think the first stage is turnover.
Yeah.
So your sales.
Can you remind me at this stage, did you remember the phrase turnovers, vanity, profit, sanity, or was it the other way around?
Yeah, that's right. No, that's right.
That's right.
Turnover is vanity and profit is sanity.
So in other words, we can be all chuffed going, oh yes, but I turned over this many millions or whatever. Mm-hmm. But it's all down to
your bottom line.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as you work through that, as we work through this conversation, you'll see that actually it's not just turnover. It's not just, my cost of sales, which are sales that would ordinarily go up and down with your sales. So if you increase volume, then your cost base goes up, for example.
Yeah.
It's not just that. Then you get down to interest. So how much debt do you have? And then you get down to your bottom line and you go, oh, sugar.
That was good control there, by the way, with the wording of that.
Thank you. It's because we're at the beginning of the week.
Oh, that's right, yeah. If
From
it was
Wednesday,
later.
that'd be it. Effing and jeffing.
Yeah. No, that was very, especially when you I was like, oh God, where are we going? No, very well controlled. Okay, so we kind of start from a sales perspective. More often than not, we're focusing on the turnover for that, aren't we?
Yeah.
That's what we're driving. And the profit almost becomes an afterthought because you're like, yes, but what does that cost me to get that? So that would be the wrong way to go it, basically.
Most people jump straight into, right, okay, I want to, for example, they use nice big round numbers and they go, right, I'll do 100 grand this year, 200 grand next year, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I'm not going to pick on the how do you get from there to there, because you're not even at that stage yet. You need to go back and say, what do I need? And how you do that is, I think Michael has done a video possibly before, but we reverse engineer. Okay.
Oh, yes.
So I would be sat with, what's one that I've done recently? I've been sat with a client recently, relatively young, and has plans for a family, but has a really prospering business, etc. What do you want in your life? First question. Yeah. Right? Okay, well, I want to purchase a property, I would like to do this, X, Y, Z. So then you go, okay, well, this is the amount of money you need, this is what you need to have your household function, this is what you need for your savings and investments, and then this is what you need for other just life stuff. Yes. Yeah, war chest, slush fund, whatever you want to call it. Right, that number, you then take that number, so more than likely that would be a per month or whatever it is, annualize it.
Yeah.
And then you work backwards. So we gross back up for tax, you add all of that back, and then you get to your profit after tax figure, right? So I've grossed back up for personal tax, okay? And then we gross back up again and we work all the way back up to turnover. Now, that is really daunting to do for lots of individuals without a finance background.
Because it's invariably higher than we were expecting, isn't it, that turnover target?
Yes, but also the mathematics involved.
Yes.
Because of grossing back up for tax, you know, that can be a little bit daunting for people. Super easy for your accountant to do. But yeah, work backwards and then you get to that figure. And yeah, you're right. Sometimes people are surprised and go, gosh, that's daunting. But then you can break it down further. Maybe we could do a different video about that in terms of strategizing, because that is a good bit of business advisory that we do.
Yeah.
But to set that turnover, you need to reverse engineer. Now, in a larger entity, that may look slightly different. It might not be, your business might be comfortable and it's giving you what you need to live the type of lifestyle that you've become accustomed to, or, you know, that you were striving for. Tick. Well, where's the next stage? Well, it might be that your business is renting a premise at the moment but it wishes to purchase.
Yep.
It might be that, I don't know, you want to invest in a new revenue stream, whatever that is, you're then getting into war chest territory, right? But either way, it's another goal. So then you're effectively doing the same exercise. Well, how much do we need to increase by? So with turnover, first thing you need is something to work towards. Yes. Otherwise, what are you comparing it to? All of these metrics, yes, you were looking at them holistically, but they all help you deliver on the strategy. So set the strategy first.
Right. And as you've explained there's a lot more to it than us as the business owners. We're just thinking business and brass tacks that we may potentially be aware of. You've got to try and explain that to people like us as well, once you're then painting that picture, and not just make us scared living daylights out of us. And to make it make sense, because we're not just going to go, oh, well, I'll do that because you said I need to.
That's where the language piece comes in. So number one, you know, you made a point earlier about, does that figure that comes out then scare people? Sometimes it might. And therefore, do we then need to be a little bit more realistic? So do we need to adjust that figure or whatever it is? But if I just said to you, right, you need to do, 500 grams worth of sales, some individuals, it would just be a number. But what you need to do is live and breathe that in order to achieve. Think of any, goal that you've had in your life. It doesn't just come easy. Yeah. You have to work to it. And to motivate that, we need to talk in meaningful terms. So for a pub owner, that might be, X amount of pints or something like that. Someone who's selling widgets, X amount of widget, X amount of clients that are on a monthly retainer, in a service business. Translate that into something meaningful for you, and it becomes possibly less daunting, but it's much easier to try and achieve.
And apologies, because in my layman terms, I'm going to start flitting inadvertently between turnover, gross profit, net profit, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that does that with you. But there's this, you mentioned cost of sale. And I don't know whether this comes, apologies if this is stupid now, but I don't know whether this comes under cost of sale. But for example, there could be a ceiling of amount of work that the business can do with the number of people on board right now that suddenly says, cool, but once we get to that point, I'm going to need another person. That's now an additional cost. So actually, that's got to be taken into account before we can get to here to get to here. Do you start looking at that stage, or is that a pivot or moving point instead?
So I think that is part of when you've got a turnover figure that you need. That's when you look underneath you and you go, okay, well, what resource do I have available?
Yes.
Now, what's difficult with that is, let's talk about the simple situation. The simple situation would be that you know the turnover figure and you have the resources to be able to get it. Easy. You just work towards that. In the scenario that you're giving now, or maybe it could be a hybrid where you're okay right now, but as you're gearing up to the turnover goal for year 2 or year 3, then we're going to have a problem. Then we get into the chicken or the egg, right? And I was always taught, this is my first boss in a firm. I remember him saying that you staff first and then you drop the work on top. We're now living in a world that is, our costs are exponential, right? If we just think back even to before COVID, wages costs are just significant. And it seems everything else is just significant. I ordered a McDonald's breakfast the other morning. I was just...
Hey, no,
So what did
no
I
judgment.
have? Anyways, I had just a normal meal, extra hash brown. I got a little something for the dog. My husband, it was like £30. It was like £30, 32. I nearly didn't press yet, but I was already salivating by this point. So I had to press yes. But, costs are crazy. So, it's a really difficult one, chicken or the egg. But I guess that's why you're all entrepreneurs. Because there is an element to you that is actually very creative and you have a stomach for risk. It's just about making sure that it's calculated risk.
Yeah.
That's why you talk to us. Talk to your accountant before you invest, before you finance a big piece of machinery. Do it before, because what we need to work out is the cash flow situation, which is, I guess, underpins all of this conversation with how these metrics work with one another. So to get the turnover, you're going to need more staff. Okay, but then do you have the cash? You might be okay now, but you might actually show that in month 9 of this year, you have a hole. How long's a hole going to last? Do you have an overdraft to cover it? Is that actually very expensive? Yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, which, again, I can very much relate to, is that I know to kick on to my next level, I need another person. But I categorically just cannot afford that other person. So that staff first drop is, it's like, I would love to be able to, but it's the whole blood from a stone situation. So we're kind of building up. And then as the business owner, I'm doing that as much as I possibly can. At the same time, I then know that once we then increase that business, well, it's going to be too much for my editing and production team. So suddenly there has to be an addition to that team as well. And that's that constant moving target. Is it true? I'm going off on a tangent now because, and I believe this, but I might be comforting myself with this. There's almost like an invisible line that initial scale up stage is very, very hard, but it then sort of can become a little bit more self-funding, I guess is the phrase I'm thinking.
Yeah.
But it is invisible. We have no idea what point we have to cross over before it becomes off we go. And yes, I'm adding people, but everything's paying for itself as I go now.
Yeah. And I think the good news there is that, yes, that does exist.
Right.
We see it a lot within our own firm as well. Yes, that invisible line is there. And I think that once you pass it, you might go, am I actually past it? Because you almost like, you don't want to believe it, is there going to be something else around the corner? Especially how business has been over the last few years with COVID and everything else and wars and everything else. The bad news is that there's another one.
Is there?
So you'll go through that and then you'll get to a point where, okay, you almost like, you've come over a hurdle. Yeah. You've come over, I don't know the saying that I'm referring to, but like you know what I mean?
I call it a hump, yeah.
And then you're, okay, growth, great. But then you'll get to like the next. So for example, £1 million worth of sales, really difficult to get through, really tough to push through the first million. Once you push through the first million, brilliant. The next hurdle is trying to push through the 2 mil, it can be very difficult. It depends what industry you're in, what you're selling, who you're selling to. So it's almost unique. To many of us. But yeah, it definitely exists.
Is that why, again, just taking on board what you were saying there, that some people then make a decision that goes, that's it, I'm not growing anymore. I'm happy where we're at. And can you maintain a status quo? Other bands are available?
So yeah, that's a really loaded question, actually. I think a lot of that is down to personality, number one.
Yeah.
If you are somebody, I don't mean this with a negative connotation, but I'm going to use the word in any case, greedy for more, then, you'll go out and you'll grab more.
Well, let's say hungry.
Yes. So there we go. Hungry.
Yeah.
So now I'm hungry. You said the word hungry. If you're the kind of person, that is hungry and wants to drive forward, then, you'll keep wanting to grow. But actually, if you've sat down and thought, but it depends where you are in your life as well, I suppose. If you've sat down and gone, right, I needed to get to this because that lifestyle, my kids and I, and my wife, etc., we can all go on holiday 2 times a year in a fabulous destination and resort. The children can do any activity they wish. Christmas is okay. You can have 14 people over for Christmas dinner and foot the bill. That's all right. if you can get to that stage and that is comfortable to you, then, and I call that financial freedom.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's my definition of financial freedom.
100%.
Somebody else may have a different one. They might want to,
no pressure. Oh, that'd be lovely.
But they might want to walk into a Harrods and never have to worry about the bill, That's not my idea of, it'd be nice, but it's not my idea of financial freedom. So to get where, going back to your statement about, is it possible to stay there? Yes, but not without taking your eye off this stuff, because even if you keep your turnover level delivering, if you don't have your eye on that margin and you don't have your eye on the cash, then it'll erode. And it'll erode quietly, right? And then all of a sudden, it's like your windows in your house, right? Maybe I'm the only person that thinks this, but windows lovely and came, oh, brilliant. And the garden looks lovely, the tree, can't believe the windows were so messy for so long. And then all of a sudden, everyth's fine. And then weeks and weeks later, my mother's coming round on the Saturday. You have a quick, oh my goodness, look at the windows.
Yeah.
It's eroded before your eyes.
And, things happen, like costs go up, so it changes what it is. I mean, I guess that there's a whole, the evolving conversation between us and say, you guys, for example, is when we've broken through those different lines or whatever we want to call it, our desires, you mentioned about it's what we want. And we go, no, I'm trying to get to that. I'm trying to get it to sell it. I'm trying to get to this point. Whatever it might be could change. I give one example that I hear quite a lot, punch drunk, is that we've had to work so hard to get it through that point, and so many challenges that suddenly came up. The government suddenly decided things with national insurance and minimum wage or whatever else to make it hard for SMEs. And we then go, do you know what? I'm not bothered about that anymore. I want this financial freedom. I think that's become much more popular now, in my opinion, because of how hard it's got. You have to be prepared to change your interpretation of what we're looking at as well, haven't you?
Yeah. So
you've got to be constantly listening and looking at the business owner to go, right, where are they at? What's their emotional state now?
Yeah.
What's their preference?
I think that every time I meet with a client or have a chat with a client on the phone maybe I haven't spoken to for a couple of months, that's always in the conversation. So Friday afternoon, I did a tax planning meeting with a client and his wife, and very, very small amount on where the business has been, right? Because we're not really interested in the past, right? The numbers are the numbers. Lots and lots of conversation about future.
And not just business, but personal as well.
Yeah, and most of that was loaded into personal, because for the style of business they have, that then has a knock-on effect to the business that they own. And yes, to answer your question, Bernie, it is always a question accountants should be asking, and if we're not, there's somewhat of a problem. Yeah,
I know. And again, I think it's Mike that's making that comment, is that it may seem that you're being nosy about our personal lives or over-friendly. Not that I've ever thought that, over-friendly. It's just, look, let's get on with the business. It's like, no. Little did we know you were already collating information just in those conversations. And it's like, have that. You used an example that someone just suddenly, I forget exactly what it was. I think it was about building an extension. And he's like, hang on. Go back to that a minute. So you want to do that? And he's like, yeah, thinking it's just a personal thing, nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
Whoa, there's something we can do here. Oh, I want my daughter to be able to go to university in 4 years' time or whatever it is. Yeah. Hang on. Well, if we can start thinking about that now. And these are all important things that even when you've put 4 metrics, turnover, gross profit, net profit, cash, they're all influenced by a whole load of different things.
Yeah. And Mike's right, like sometimes I catch myself on the phone, so there'll be a prospect, who's telephoned in or whatever it is, and the goal is always to go out and see them face to face, but first you gather some information, and I'll be on the phone, I'll be like, right, okay, and okay, how old's your wife? Yeah, and what does she earn? And you kind of catch yourself and go, I'm asking these questions for a purpose, I assure you. And yeah, often I straight up say, I am being nosy, but I need to have the full picture.
Yeah. Which is nice. It's like a financial cuddle.
Yeah.
You can have that one. I can tell from the reaction that's one you've never ever had.
I'm not really a hugger.
Yeah, no, exactly. One of the comments that you put in this thing, though, is that there's always a risk on focusing on only one of the metrics or one or two of the metrics.
Yeah, so I think that leads us nicely into gross profit. So boring bit, turnover, obviously your sales. Gross profit is your cost of sales, okay? And often these sales vary with output, as I said earlier. And in simple form, say you sell this lovely false succulent. Say you sell those. The more of those that you sell, the higher your cost of producing said succulent will be, because you're increasing the volume.
Yep.
Yeah. Even if you buy in from China or whatever, you've got freight cost, duty, et cetera, et cetera. So that is gross profit. After that, you have overheads. Yeah, your rent, your heat and light, etc. Wages sometimes sit in in cost of sales too. Sometimes you have a mixture in cost of sales or in overheads. Depends on the business. So when I'm talking about gross profit, what I mean is that for every pound of turnover you make, say your gross profit was 30%. For every pound of turnover you have, 30 pence is the gross margin, the profit. Gross profit.
Okay.
Yeah. So the reason that this is an important metric is that often cost of sales, this isn't always the case, especially in a manufacturing business. Yes, this is definitely the case. But when you start to get into something like your business, for example, it gets a little bit more tricky. But essentially, gross profit is always in a percentage normally. Or you can think of it in pence, but never, I would stay away from the monetary side as much as you can. So say your turnover was 100,000 and you were aiming for a 30,000 pound margin, right? So 30%. I wouldn't ever suggest relying on that 30,000. 30% is what you need to be relying on. And the reason for that is that the percentage makes it relative, right?
Of course.
So gross profit margin is calculated by turnover minus cost of sales. And that gives you the margin.
Yeah.
And you can convert that into a percentage by taking that margin and dividing it by your turnover. That's how we get the percentage.
Yeah.
I would always focus on that percentage. I also would completely ignore the calculation I just talked about. You set it up in a sheet once and that's it. Or most software will spit it out for you and calculate it for you. Okay? But it's the percentage that's important. And the reason for that is because your turnover could be going up and up and up and up and up. But actually your costs have also been going up and up and up and up. Or your turnover, and this is what's happening a lot, right? Your turnover stays the same and you think I'm safe.
Yeah.
But actually what's happened is your cost base has increased and you haven't increased your prices. We've all got in our emails right now, no doubt, EE, Eon, all of these suppliers saying, oh, inflation, well, made me laugh the other day. Inflation is currently at 3% and something, which means you're having a 7% rise in your, in your costs. And I thought, oh, it's a bit of a disparity.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And I think that's the biggest issue that businesses are finding at the moment.
Yeah.
And it's because they don't have this visibility. So percentage, always percentage.
And it is very important because, of course, we're all of our costs going up because their costs are going up. So not even just, by any kind of national figure, but by their costs have increased. We have to therefore increase, but no one likes to do that. And we're scared to actually put that, but it's like, you don't have a choice. But if you're not looking at it, you can be the nice person and try to keep your costs the same. And suddenly you're eroding into that, aren't you? Mm-hmm.
And sadly, when that happens, the realization comes far too late. And I don't mean far too late as in, okay, the business is now insolvent. I mean that I think emotionally, when a business owner sits there and they're in a position then where their margin is basically gone, it's not a case of, it's not as dramatic, hopefully, as having to pack up shop and, you're done. But it's the feeling of going, I've just worked my ass off for the last year, and you're telling me that it meant nothing?
Yep.
It's that. And that, I think, can be soul destroying for individuals as well. That's really tough.
It can. And then I guess once that's settled down, you've got to look at it, which is what we're touching on today, is okay, how can I change that? It means, yes, my prices do have to go up, or it means I've got to cut costs somewhere. But in essence, it needs to be looked at again.
Yeah.
And reanalyzed.
I think people worry about putting costs up because you've gained a part of your market share, right? Especially if you're a smaller business, but there are other businesses kicking around that do similar things within the locality or whatever it is. But often I think that you'll know your customers, your clients that may have a problem with that. However, conversations, this is like our best tool, just to kind of pick up the phone. Or, if that's not possible, to actually have it kind of lathered over social media and within your, mail merges that are going out, etc. And just being honest. Yeah. Because we're all be human.
And it could include, in some cases, that you have to let a customer go.
Yes.
And that's a realization that, A, we don't want to think about that, and B, we might not understand that it has to be until we look at this holistic, not just one metric, look at the whole lot together and goes, do you know what? They're not going to accept a price increase. I can't have them as a client at that figure.
Yeah.
We're not here for that. We are a business.
Yeah.
And so it's about seeing the bigger picture to know if that ever became the case. And we would need to know for definite, wouldn't we, as business owners, right, am I really going to consider this? I need to know that without question, this has to be done.
Yeah. And often I think you have that data and then you go for that conversation. And if you aren't able to meet in the middle to increase, it might be that you agree to increase the price over 2 years, for example, that there are ways of being somewhat flexible without it costing you too much. But you've actually done, I think for me, you've shown integrity because you've put yourself in front of the client. You've had that conversation. We're all running businesses at the end of the day. So we should totally understand where one another's coming from.
Yeah, we're not being greedy, but we aren't being a charity either.
No.
It's that balancing act about understanding that something needs to give here. I had one recently, one of my subscriptions that we have to have as part of what we do for our clients, suddenly was about to double monthly. Like, next month, the figure will be this. And I was like, what? Where does this come from? And I dropped them a line and said, look, I would love to stay with you, but you've just out of the blue, it's going to suddenly cost, £100 more a month. No chance. I cannot do this, but I've enjoyed working with you. So I'm giving you a chance to look at it. And they went, look, we understand it. We have to put our costs up, but we understand that this has come from nowhere. We will keep it this price for the next 12 months, but you need to then budget for the fact that at the end of that 12-month period, it will be going up to this or whatever its equivalent at that time is. And so you can either choose to sadly go somewhere else or have budgeted for it. And I went, I can live with that. I don't like that it's going up, but they've been honest with me, I presume, said that they've had to face it. And they've clearly gone and looked at the bigger picture of what they need to do, because that was no small increase. And it will be things like they've added functionality that actually probably doesn't make a difference to me.
Yeah.
But they've increased the value and the cost, etc., of their service, their product. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think this is where. So if you're monitoring your margin and then you're noticing dips, then you need to investigate and understand why that is. Okay, so maybe it is that you have to transport goods and all of a sudden the freight carrier has become exponentially more expensive. Do you need to renegotiate and have it? It just helps you have your finger, on the pulse or on the button. It just helps you have the current knowledge, current data in order to make informed decisions. But most importantly, I think to make those decisions within an appropriate time frame before we get to that erosion.
Yes. Can we stomach for another 12 months, for example? But that has to be the Band-Aid ripped off at that point.
Yeah. And to pull these two metrics together that we've talked about so far, you could have turnover of, say, 200,000, and you have a client that you can now win for 10,000. It's going to put 10,000 revenue on per annum. Okay, brilliant. But if it's at a margin of 70%, when actually your margin is 30, you either then decide no, or you might think, this client, I can see they're growing. And I know that this client in 3 years' time will actually become a 35 grand client, at which point from a margin perspective, I will be able to develop efficiencies and operate at a lower margin. So what's important here when you're looking at these metrics, they're focused in the here and now, but because you're a business owner, you're also a strategizer. And sometimes with a client, it's worth looking at the short term, medium term, and the long term. And that long term piece is really important. I remember going into NatWest when I went to university. I went into NatWest and I said, can I please open a student bank account? And at the time, I'd lived overseas, so I didn't have an address in this country for very long. And they were actually quite rude, and they said no. And I thought, oh, right, okay. And I walked out of there extremely embarrassed. But it is what it is. I won't use them now, Yeah. Maybe I'm not the kind of client that they've got, the kind of customer that they want. I don't know. But I think that speaks for itself.
Yeah. I know you do. You have to think of that effect on people, don't you? Without question. You made another comment here, what good looks like, and a crossover between visibility and decisions.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? So
in terms of these, I meant that in holistic sense. So the metrics we have are turnover, gross profit we've talked about in detail. There are two others, which is profit after tax and cash. Now, what good looks like is that, number one, you're achieving your strategy.
Yep.
So the turnover that you wanted or whatever. But also within that strategy, you'll have a margin that you're working towards. And then also you'll have things like, in terms of cash, you might have something like debtor days, how quickly your customers are paying you, right? Or if you kept stock, you might have a certain level of stock, or a stock system, do you get it in just in time? What are you doing? What good looks like is whatever metrics there are for you, are they actually serving a purpose? There's no point in measuring things if it's just going to end up being a number on a piece of paper that you never do anything with. They need to be metrics that help you make decisions. They should not take an excessive amount of time to pull together, because you look at your life, right? And you go, okay, how much have I got time? I got this amount of time to go to work and to progress the business, but then I've also got a family, or whatever that is.
Yeah.
So you need to manage that. And it needs to be something that's really, really fluid, quick and fiery. And you should know that if these 4 metrics are performing, then the business is performing. You should know that straight away. Yeah. 4 numbers, look at them. Are we doing okay? 4 numbers. Yes. Move on. Why spend any more time on it?
Which just makes me feel daft that I probably couldn't go and just lay my hands on those right now, if I'm honest. But you talk about tools. I do. Through you, I guess I probably shouldn't name the platform that I happen to use, but that does give me and you, as my accountants, the ability to see that information straight away, as long as I'm up to date on my reconciliation.
Yes, it does, and that is a very important point, actually, Chris. Yes, that's right. There's software. So there's finance softwares, Xero, QuickBooks, Sage, Free Agent, to name a few. And the crux of it is that they all do very similar things. I think the key difference would be accessibility, or how intuitive they are. Yeah. I can't stand QuickBooks. Michael loves QuickBooks. I love Xero. Michael doesn't really like zero. So you've got two
preferences.
accountants there, that are really, really different. The bit where you can go a little bit extra with it, right, is that your system won't necessarily, pop this stuff out just at a click of a button. You either set up bespoke reports within the system, which will give you most of what you need here without too much intervention, or you can use an add-on. Okay, so especially when you're going into a bigger size business, you use an add-on. So a couple that I use, I really like Spotlight, Fathom. Very simple one would be Fluidly. And what these do is that these systems pull your numbers together, so you'll get a profit and loss and you get a balance sheet. But what you can also do is a cash flow. You can put the budget in that you have for the year. So what is my turnover? What's my cost of sales, etc., etc. But what it'll also do is forecast. And they're really clever, right? Because they forecast over time through an API connection, and whatever cleverness they have in the background, and now with the use of AI too, they analyze the data in real time. And the type of data they're analyzing is, right, you pay Joe Bloggs every month on the 28th or the nearest working day. Your customer, ABC Limited, your payment terms are 30 days. Actually, they lag. And on the average of the last 6 months, they've paid at 45 days. So it'll cash flow forecast that, and it will build those metrics into it. So you can have a really accurate depiction of where your business may be. And then another really powerful thing that you can do very easily within these tools is, you asked me a question earlier about whether or not I should take this client on, but I'm going to need to buy in more resource. Yeah. You can set up a scenario. You can very, very quickly go in there. You can put in the person, that their salary, it'll add on costs, NI, etc., pension. Or you might say, is it better for me to subcontract? Or you can build another scenario and whack that in there. Wow. And then we can very, very quickly see the impact on cash over an extended period of time. And for me, that's so powerful to be able to make a decision like that, because let's continue with a staff example. It's an employee's world right now. Okay. So we're faced with massive recruitment fees. And there are, certainly in my world, it feels like there's a lot more jobs than there are people available. I was speaking to a recruiter recently, actually, and on the legal side, it seems to be flipped the other way. Okay. There's a lot of newly qualifieds and not a job. So that's just to highlight the differences that we can face over the industries. But you might need to react really quickly and get an offer out to a person. But you need to also see very quickly if you can afford that. And it's not just about the profit at all. So if I could just touch on the other two metrics, the profit after tax is important, because after we've got to gross profit, then you're adding on all of your overheads, and you think, they're just overheads. Actually, rent can be very expensive. The subscription, what do we call it? Snowball. I've just told you about an add-on, right? You've got your normal subscription for your finance. Next thing you know, you've gone for an add-on. Something that was only £50 a month, that seems okay, has now just become 100, double. The gentleman or the company, the company that's just, attempting to double your fees. Those can get out of hand. So it's really important to have visibility of those. And then there are many other energy. That's been a huge issue for us. So after that, you get to a profit after tax figure. And the reason I say to focus on profit after tax is because you'll have net profit before tax, and you go, I've made a good bit of money. Actually, the tax rate has just gone up for corporation tax last year, up to 25% for profits over 50,000. Right? So what you were used to paying, 19%, I'm used to that. You've now gone up to 25, for anything over that 50. And between 50 and 250, you're at a marginal rate of 26.5. That feels very, very different. Especially when it comes out your bank for the first time. So very, very important metric, because you can't take dividends unless you have realizable profit, right? and those profits. We had a conversation about that before we started this. So that's important. And the last one is cash. Cash is king, is what you said. It is king because it's literally the driver of how the business functions. So if I said to you, your turnover, you're smashing it, right? You wanted 500,000, you're on 500,005. Fantastic. Your margin is 30%. It's stable. You're achieving 30% every time. You have profits after tax, but you don't have any cash in the bank. Why could that be?
I don't know.
So, could be a couple of things. One of those things could be that you hold stock.
Ah, of course.
You have bought too much stock.
That's where I struggle with it because I'm not a stock-based business. So, okay, that's the challenge they face.
There is an important one really relevant to you, which I'll give after. But stock, many businesses, some panic, right?
Yeah.
Because they've got market share. They've got their market share. People are so price conscious and information is so, it's available at the tip of our fingers now. Okay. They can just go online. They can go onto large companies' website and check the stock availability at their warehouse there and then on a wholesale basis and when it's going to be delivered. That means you are really at risk for customers being really dynamic and making very fast choices. So often we see that they hold lots and lots of stock. So all your cash is tied up in that stock.
Yeah.
If you hold on for the stock too long, it can go obsolete and it's going to be worth nothing and you certainly won't be able to sell it. Or if you're in a business whereby the product moves on quite quickly, or maybe the appetite of the customer moves on quite quickly, then all of a sudden you're in a position where you've also got stock that you can't sell. So your cash has been tied up. You created a loss when actually you did it because you were trying to make a profit.
Yeah.
The other common example is debtors. Having your customers not pay you on time or within the time frame that you need. You really have to have a close handle on debtors. You need to be constantly watching it. You need to be, as an SME, you need to be willing to pick up the phone to those ones that aren't paying, put procedures in place and consider going legal if you have to, and very easy to do if under 10,000, escalating to small claims. Don't forget to include interest. And, so when we look at these 4 metrics together, I think that example shows you that you can be absolutely smashing it over here, but that one metric has fallen, cash, and then all of a sudden you are struggling to pay wages potentially, or whatever.
And there's been the occasional time when you talk about cash is that you kind of sit there and you can't even just you definitely can't take it on just an annual basis. Not necessarily quarterly, sometimes not even monthlies. You kind of go, well, that's cool, but I know I've got to pay all of that by then, but actually these invoices aren't being settled until then at best. Okay, because I've gone and bought something that I needed here, for example, that now means I've not got the cash to pay that. And so you have to be aware of that because these things go in peaks and troughs of what you choose to invest in and what comes in. Yeah. And I've had once or twice the situation that's gone, oops, I need to get this sorted out. So you sometimes have to take it on a daily or weekly basis.
Absolutely.
To some extent.
And I think the tools that we've talked about help you do that. We've got bank feeds now, so you can virtually, within 24 hours certainly, see the live, and there's only some banks that are that late. Most of them are within 5 minutes to 2 hours. That bank balance in there is real, and the transactions in there are real, providing the reconciliations have been done correctly historically, that they are real. So what you have is these 4 metrics, and just the example we just gave was that turnover, net profit, profit after tax, all of that was working, but cash wasn't. But then we could also be going a slightly different way. You could have so if you had turnover down and margin down, everything else would be lower. But you could equally have turnover up and margin up, but a big problem in your overheads. Yeah. So your profit after tax or your net profit is going to be lower than you anticipated for snowballing subscriptions or whatever it is.
Well, and subscription's an interesting one for me that can have the effect. They try to, for want of a better word, seduce you into going with an annual fee instead of a monthly fee. And when you do the maths, you kind of go, well, that makes sense, but that means I'm now paying that out then. And where I've had those examples is where I've kind of forgotten that I've done those things, come up for renewal next year and I'm like, oh heck, I've got that. And I've not done the bigger picture, and I've gone and bought something like, I don't know, a $2,000 video editing computer or whatever it might be. And you go, wow, if I'd have bought that in month 9, zero problem over the year. And it's not a problem over the year, full stop. But because I forgot that I'm going to have all of this coming in, and I've done it in month 3, that's now caused me a problem. I'm making all of these up in terms of real details. Yeah. But it's that point of the cash, being aware of the movement of it through the year. You have to be aware of it, because it doesn't mean I can't afford to get it. It could be the when. When is the right time for me to do that?
And that point, so imagine building on that and say you finance that, okay? What happens when, okay, that's the finance, and I think we buy assets because they are going to bring economic benefit to our businesses, right? That's why we buy them. They generate cash. But if you've got a finance deal on an asset and that asset doesn't generate you the cash in line with the erosion to your cash for the loan repayment together with the interest, you may have a problem if you're not already on an even footing and you have a cushion in there. So that software that I mentioned, the add-on, that's a really, really good one, because you can put in the investment of this piece of kit, whatever it is. I mean, we've got some clients, you know, who are into engineering, and their kit's like £400,000 for one machine. Yeah, but what they can machine after, it's easier in a way because you can measure the outputs a lot better than, for example, video equipment, you know, because how many man hours does it take to then edit, for example? But yeah, it's all about a visibility. And I'll take the opportunity to plug something which I think is really important for all SME owners. There's a consultation going on at the moment with HMRC where there is some opinion that it's been somewhat under the radar. And what this consultation is for the revenue to be getting reporting, like regular reporting on director loan account transactions. Now, I have no idea yet what this level, what the burden will be, right, in terms of reporting. I'm not suggesting for a second that it's anything like making tax digital for VAT or for MTD for ITSA that we're in. I'm not suggesting that. I'm saying I don't know. I don't know if it means that, you know, the loan account transactions in the finance system need to be perfect and up to date then, or if it actually means that there's alternative reporting in place. I'm not sure, but that's really, really important for SMEs. The beginning of this conversation, you talked about, you know, directors possibly using the DLA quite significantly, and the business will cover it, and the next month it all goes back. Yes, that's really, really important for cash management. It is. But with this new, potentially after the consultation, this new level of reporting burden, I suppose, that might actually be something for directors to really think about too, which would mean really, really tightening up, okay, what income do you need every month? Because, you know, with all due respect to the revenue, the more you're putting through your DLA and the more you're abusing it, the more risk you have then of, you know, having an investigation, I suppose. But actually the risk is that it'll snowball. And next thing you know, you're having to pay Section 455 tax, which is a deemed dividend tax, very expensive. That's often where we can see trouble coming sometimes in terms of these metrics when we see an abused DLA. And then unfortunately we go, yeah, here's a tax bill for it.
Yeah, which, I mean, you know, almost changing the connotation there of abusing it is that it's invariably by accident. You know, as far as it's set up, is that's what I need, the minimum I need to take home, and the way that it's accounted for is directors' drawings after the basic salary, and suddenly you lose a couple of retainers or something like that, and this is where the cash bit became interesting, is that it was like going, oh no, but it's fine. I can afford, it's there. I can still pay myself what that was. And then suddenly at the end of the year, you go, actually, that's kind of that. And so there's a tax on it, but it wasn't a deliberate abuse of it necessarily, but it is as far as they're concerned, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's where the interesting balancing act, it never gets easy, which, you know, is a key thing that we've shown here with this in reality, is that by being as aware as possible, by having it interpreted for planning, for the here and now, and to report backwards on it as well. It's absolutely vital.
Yeah.
We can be busy fools very easily.
Yeah.
Very easily. But is it doing the right things in the right order at the right times? And we can only make those decisions when we've got everything in front of us.
Yeah. And I know that paying another subscription or paying increased fees to your accountant, it's just another cost. But I think you flip it on its head in that it's actually an investment. And most of that actually is your time. Mm-hmm. Because I speak to lots of business owners and I'm always asking, tell me what your time looks like. Like, how much of a burden is this for you? Or if at all, some people say they enjoy doing it. But often it's like, this is just too much admin for me.
Yeah.
And yes, it's a cost, but actually if it buys you 3 hours, every other day or whatever it is to go and put your feet up, watch EastEnders or be with your family, then it might actually be worth considering, especially when you've got the added value of having more control over your own life and business strategy.
And because that's the whole point, is that invariably we're working so hard that we're spending very little time on ourselves, on our family, and it's just working too hard, and we have health considerations, we have stress, burnout, all of those kind of things. And so to be able to get that balance back in check is a goal that I think the majority of us, if not all of us, would invariably have. It runs away from us at the best of times.
I think one thing not to be afraid of with this, for example, in turnover and margin, you might get to a point where you look at this video, you watch this video, and then you've looked back at your own margin. Oh, that's not where I thought I was in my head. Okay, well, what do you do about that? Pricing is so important. Mm-hmm. But it's also really difficult. And I'm going to quote our old MD. He retired a few years ago. He used to say to me, Hannah, sometimes it's an art, not a science. And personally, I'm pretty data-based. So he used to say, you're going to have to cut this out. But he was right. In some instances, in some ways. And pricing, yes, it's data driven. So we need to do a piece of work often and how to get there. But also it is a bit of artistic flair too.
Yep.
And that's why it's important to put the accountant's head together with the business owner, because you know your business, you know your clients, you know the environment, you know your external threats and factors. And then we know the financy side. So pricing can be difficult. Do not be afraid to pick up the phone and talk to your accountant over it. I did a really weird one last year before. I won't say the particulars of it, but it was quite strange. It was really fun in the end. That's how sad I am. It was really fun in the end. But what's rewarding for me is seeing that now paid dividend. And that was a business where the director was on the phone to me, actually hysterical that the whole thing was going to go down the pan.
Wow. And
we sat and we did little exercises like this. We did a few really, really effective things, which ended up actually what you've got now as a business that's working really, really well. So don't be afraid to just pick up the phone.
Because I think we do often go too low on our prices, don't we? We don't have a confidence at the get-go. I've had situations where I've been lucky enough for one of my other businesses, actually, and the importance of that business waned because of all the other things I was doing, and the love for that after the pandemic challenges and things like that had gone. It's probably the easiest summary of that one, which meant I didn't proactively push that. It was all on Visual PR Productions that I was doing all the work because it's growing very rapidly. Suddenly I was getting interest coming in for this other business, and because I was less desperate, I think is the word I'm going to use here, for the business, because that really describes, I think, the mentality we have where we go, we've got to get a business in, therefore it needs to be lower. I was happy to go with a higher figure, and if they didn't go for it, it's fine.
Yeah.
I was getting yeses all the time.
Yeah, you made yourself in.
And I'm like, how did that happen? And I always remember with this business in its early stages, somebody, a fellow business colleague, turned to me and said, "You're too low." He said, "Double your figures." And I went, "How can I do that? I'm struggling to get this off the ground now." He went, "Double your figures and you will." And I went, "Oh, that sounds counterintuitive in my head. Surely the way that I get more business is being, low enough to be attractive." But went for it because I had nothing to lose. Boom, it increased. Yeah. And of course, I don't need to suddenly have arbitrary figures. 100 clients, I only needed 75 clients to get to where I needed to, for example. Yeah. But it can be down to things like perception of your business. Well, if it's cheap, what am I getting?
Yeah, there's lots of entities, for example, that are voluntarily registered for VAT to appear larger than they are.
Yes.
And start their invoices off at, 500, because to make it look like there's been a lot more generated before. You're right, it's perception. And pricing strategy is a really interesting topic. And if we think of what we see, something we'd all be familiar with, thinking that you could go low and gain market share, right? That's something called penetration pricing. Yes. So you go low and then you start to inflate. And if you think of Shein, for example, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, so cheap, at your fingertips, and now ignoring the duty and everything like that. And now, but those prices, they are going up.
Are they?
So, because they've got the users in, they've got you there. There's quite a few good examples of that. So, I don't know what Domino's were back in the day, but I feel like Domino's is so expensive. But that stuffed crust is just to die for, So if a voucher comes through the door and it's for X amount off, or if I look online on the app, I'll buy it. I'll still be a customer
because they've got you. You've already tasted it, so it's it's worth it. And I think that's a great analogy for business in general. Let them, if you choose the penetration, because skimming's the other one, isn't it, where you make it high and whatever else. But I know it's so interesting that you've got to be prepared to look at those figures. And I've had an experience where someone made me think that my prices were too high, and I started questioning the other way. And then looked around and went, no, they're not. And someone else was still telling, I had several others that going, you do realise that it could easily be more than that. And we're just left in this challenge that going, there's no right or wrong, is there? No. It's about the value that it is to the people that are taking your product or service, and about understanding what that is, having confidence and belief in what it is you're providing and running with that. But there's still always going to be that. And that's where the bigger picture comes in that says, okay, costs are going up. So that's going to have even more of an impact now on prices than it ever has, I think, personally. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think what you've demonstrated just there, aside from the points that you succinctly outlined in your conclusion there, what you've just demonstrated to every person watching this is how lonely being a business owner can be, how isolating it can be, and your accountant should be your critical friend too. You should get on with your accountant. I think that as clients, sorry, I just hit the mic. I think that as client, I want clients that I get on with, right? We don't have to be similar at all. It's better not to be, but clients we can get on a level with, right? And you guys need accountants you can be on a level with, because that is what catalyzes good conversation. It breaks down barriers, and all of a sudden we learn more about one another and we can do more with each other.
And trust.
Exactly. And all of that is underpinned by that trust. So business owners, there's no need to be lonely. It is inevitable because you're entrepreneurs, but your accountant is someone you should be able to bounce all of these thoughts off. By having those, little short meetings with them, or whatever arrangement it is that you have, they're really important.
Yeah. I agree.
It's tough at the top, as they say.
Certainly is. I used to have hair. That's not true, is it? It's not. I did actually. You'd be surprised to know I had a full head of hair and it would curl outwards, bizarrely.
I genuinely don't believe you.
I did. I'll have to bring photos in to show you.
I want to see those.
It's all gone.
I think the other saying, tough at the top, is one of Rob Stokes' favourite, and it says, shite slides downhill.
Very, very
true.
They're
like fighting away.
key message for this one, though, is, yes, we're always going to be busy, but it needs to be managed busy, not busy fools. And there are the 4 key metrics: turnover, which is probably the easiest one, because you're sat there going, well, I know that the sales are going to be this, and we get up there fine, but we need to look at gross profit. But I think we probably ignore net profit too much. That needs to be looked at more. But at the same time, yes, look at that cash. Don't focus on cash only, because cash is not automatically king. However, don't ignore it either, because these could be looking good, but the timings could be off. Mm-hmm. So that needs to be very much managed as well. 4 key metrics altogether. We can be aware of it ourselves as business owners, but you guys really can paint that picture for us even better.
And turnover is vanity and profit is sanity. Never ever look at turnover without looking at your profit. Whether that's margin, whatever it is. Let my words ring in your brain.
Absolutely. I get it. It is the turnover is the bit that we might shout even in marketing or whatever else, or to investors. But the investors will be asking us about, what does that really mean? I get it. Have we covered everything that you wanted to cover?
I think so, unless you have any
questions.
We
could carry on talking for ages. I know there's so much more. But thank you so much for explaining all of this to us.
You're most welcome.
An awful lot more that people could do, and specifics, of course, for everybody.
Yeah.
And the biggest advice, optps.co.uk. Reach out, get in touch with you guys, and have those conversations, whether that's existing clients that suddenly realise they probably haven't had enough two-way conversations with you to get in touch, or people that aren't yet clients to speak with you. Fabulous.
Absolutely.
Well, Hannah, thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us. I hope it's been useful. Might be even more questions that have been created as I say that, but reach out and the team will be able to answer those for you and find out what's the right way to go. But all the very best for now. We'll see you in the next episode of Optimum Live.